So there'll be a pop-up notification to show on the screen, and I will ask Heidi to pop a note in the chat to remind you all. So for those of you that don't know me, and I appreciate not everyone on this meeting is going to be a CLOA member because it's a collaborative event. My name is Debbie Kay. I'm chair of the Chief Cultural and Leisure Officers Association, otherwise known as CLOA. We are the professional association for strategic leaders managing public sector culture, arts, heritage, tourism, libraries, parks, sports and leisure services. And this roundtable is a part of a series of events that aims to provide an opportunity for professionals to connect with peers, share information and best practice. In my day job, I'm also known as Head of Community Services at Cambridge City Council. What I'm going to suggest is, if you would like to, you're very welcome to introduce yourself to other people in the meeting via the chat. So please go ahead and do that if you would like to. So today's session is what CLOA calls a roundtable. And I've explained the purpose of these, but today we have delighted to have XP and the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Region of Learning Skills and Opportunity presentation. This is a programme led by Cambridge City Council. It aims to address a range of social mobility, economic and employment issues through raising participation levels in learning, improving skills and wellbeing, and dynamically linking people to career opportunities. It's a really innovative and ambitious project. It's part of the Cities of Learning wider movement, which includes Southampton, Belfast, Bradford, Brighton, Plymouth, and Tees Valley. So during today's roundtable, you'll have the opportunity to hear from Cambridge City Council and their delivery partners. That's the RSA, Navigatr, Badge Nation, and Future Creators. And at the end, there'll be the opportunity for questions and discussion and to find out about how your local authority could join this growing movement. Okay, just a bit of housekeeping. So if you could all, as an audience, be on mute while the presentations are taking place, that would be great. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat for the Q&A. You can do this as we go along if you prefer. Presenters, please keep to time. I will remind you if you're beginning to run over. And just to let everybody know, there will be a link to the presentations that will be circulated after the event. So hopefully that's given you the context we need for today. I'm going to hand over now to Michelle Lord. Michelle is on the CLOA Executive Board, and she's also the manager of the XP and Cambridgeshire Peterborough Region of Learning project. So Michelle, over to you.
Oh, great. Can everybody hear me okay? I take that as a yes. Great. Well, it's brilliant to be here. So yeah, I'm Michelle. I work at Cambridge City Council, and it's brilliant to be here presenting at this CLOA event. So today I'm going to tell you a bit about our XP journey from a local authority perspective, the drivers behind the model that we've co-developed with our partners, how it improves outcomes for those most in need, and take you from really the kind of proof of concept stage through to the development of the current model. So across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we do face some significant place-based challenges and entrenched inequalities. So for example, we are unfortunately in the bottom 25% nationally for school and youth social mobility, and Cambridgeshire is where 75% of children growing up in poverty are also in workless households, which compares to 42% nationally. Cambridgeshire also has the second highest number in the country of 19-year-olds from low-income backgrounds that don't have a level 2 qualification. And we also know if you don't have that level 2 qualification, then you are nearly a quarter, 25% more likely to struggle to be employed. But we also know that there is this really strong correlation, really positive correlation between participation in additional learning and the increased likelihood of gaining a whole range of benefits. And this includes improved skills, cultural and social capital, improved well-being, engaging in lifelong learning, and improving someone's employability and career prospects. And this really is the kind of evidence base and the opportunity that the region of learning approach is responding to and has indeed been building upon since we first started on this journey 6 years ago. But the challenge is that we also know that people from less advantaged backgrounds, and particularly young people, are up to 75% less likely to participate in additional learning, and therefore way less likely to benefit from all of those associated benefits. So the question became, how do we start to operationalise an approach that could lead to positive behaviour change and greater participation, which is for the many rather than the few? So we did a whole raft of work around feasibility, live prototyping, aimed at engaging young people to test lots of ideas and different concepts that we developed. So this included a few national firsts, such as linking digital badges to activities and activity data, gathering individual people's preferences and what learning and events they'd like to take part in, how far they could travel, etc. So each and every person in our live prototype got this individualised communication of the local offer that we knew was meeting their needs and interests. We then introduced ways of capturing the engagement. So we used a substitute library card at this stage and a QR code scanner, and gave this participation data back to the individual young people through a digital CV. We introduced real world and virtual incentives that we were targeting specifically to those we knew were from low income backgrounds. And critically, we brought together something like 35 different activity providers into one platform. So people, to discover what was on their doorstep, you didn't have to go to 30 or 40 different websites to do that. You could just come to one place and find all of that information. So the other thing that was critical to this approach was trying to develop something that we knew could be scalable and replicable and could be applied to other local authorities. So that was very much part of the thinking really from the beginning. And in terms of what happened through that prototype, we used as a benchmark the Social Mobility Commission data that said that only 25% of children and young people who are from a less advantaged background are likely to participate. So that became the benchmark for us to decide whether or not our pilot was successful. And the take up in the pilot gave us that all essential proof of concept that what we were delivering actually created that positive behaviour change. So for young people who are under the age of 11, we actually had a participation, over the age of 11 was 43%, and over the age of 11 was 52% from families who were on low incomes. So this was quite incredible to think about. Within, I think it was like a 5.5-month period that we were delivering this live pilot, that we'd significantly increased that level of participation based on a national benchmark. And notably, 53% of those taking part tried something they'd never ever done before. So that really gave us the kind of fuel, if you like, to be able to take the project further. Alongside that, we were really concerned about the dearth of available data on participation and impact. So as part of that live prototype, we tested gathering lots of different data, from personal data, socioeconomic, deprivation data, and indeed collected around 900 different data fields that could all be compared and could all be analysed in conjunction with each other. So again, kind of demonstrating the power of this project and the power of the approach, particularly if it was scaled up and it was delivered longitudinally. So off the back of all of this kind of prototyping and research work, we refined those programme goals and priorities. So those priorities became raising the participation level, but really focusing on those people at risk of marginalisation or not being in education, employment or training, working to be able to identify and promote future skills for future jobs, looking at a whole range of skills, actually, including transferable and specialised skills, honing how we can recruit and get those groups most likely to face inequality to join the programme, and looking at how we can use digital badging to provide pathways, so pathways to careers, self-development and skills development. And again, that sort of emphasis on evidence, both in terms of giving evidence back to participants, but also how we collect evidence in a more robust way in terms of impact measurement. And then the next stage really was kind of bringing together all those great things that we tested and joining forces with RSA and the Cities of Learning model, which, you know, is very much what now represents the model that we're currently delivering. So in terms of where we're at the moment, we do have funding to work with just under 1,100 young people across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough who are at risk of being NEET or are unemployed or economically inactive. And here are some examples of some digital badges that we've developed. Digital badges, if you haven't come across them, are it's an amazing way of being able to provide evidence of lots of different types of skills development experience. So whether that's in informal learning, formal learning, things like volunteering and work experience. And they're also infinitely shareable. So these are things that are that you can share on all sorts of different social media platforms, which you can't easily do with something which is a paper certificate, for example. So digital badges effectively offer a kind of common currency. They're a way of signposting activities as well as being able to recognise them. And we think that over time it will mean that, realistically, it will mean that no skill needs to ever go unrecognised again. It's recognising skills and achievement and experience in real time. And then it's real-time connection with other opportunities, which I'll talk about shortly. Another thing that we've done, which is highly innovative, is applying a cutting edge skills taxonomy, which enables learning and participation to be dynamically connected to labour market opportunities. And we've partnered with a company called Lightcast to develop this. This is a skills taxonomy, arguably the most cutting edge available, and it represents over 30,000 different skills. And the architecture that sits behind this is really robust. So it sort of boils down the labour market into these core categories, and then there's many subcategories that sit behind this. But what we've developed with our partners is the ability to dynamically match the skills that you'll see within a digital badge to live opportunities within our particular region. And we're the first people to do this. We're the first people to take this data set of skills and apply it in this way, but also to apply it to digital badging. And you'll hear a lot more about digital badging shortly. So here's a few examples of this in action. We've been working across a range of employers and learning providers and third sector organisations. And we work with a company called Costello Medical, which is a local employer, who have been struggling with recruiting into a number of their entry-level roles. So this is an admin assistant applicant. And using the framework by Lightcast and a skills scanner that we've developed with them, we were able to take this particular admin assistant role and boil it down to its 10 top skills. And again, applying those skills to digital badging in the form of a pathway, what this enables is, from a young person's perspective, is the ability to work towards gaining those skills with local providers that meet the needs of Costello Medical. Or conversely, if somebody has already got evidence of these skills and these digital badges, and actually these digital badges could be swapped out for lots of others that have the same skills tags, is that we can then notify them that they've got X percentage of those skills relevant to that job. So we think that this is a great way of being able to create greater visibility for particular examples of opportunities, but and then to widen that talent pool that's available to employers as well. This is an example of a pathway that relates to a work experience. So this particular work experience, if we weren't using digital badges, the young people that would be participating would otherwise have no formal recognition of the types of activities, achievements and skills that they've gathered through this particular work experience. So hopefully you're beginning to see just how flexible digital badging is and how this really offers, from a young person's perspective, a fantastic way of recognising what they're able to do. But essentially, once you have these digital badges, you're part of this much wider ecosystem, which is connecting badges and skills into other opportunities. We've also been looking at how we can use digital badging from within Cambridge City Council as well, in terms of internal progression and succession. So some of the fallout from COVID will be things like, you know, the great retirement, the great resignation, the fact that we've recently had the all-time high for vacancies. And this is a pathway that shows how we can connect existing internal training opportunities in a really purposeful way to support internal progression or succession to really fill an otherwise hard to fill vacancy. So again, it's making the most of that existing provision, but really creating destinations and outcomes that can be achieved by connecting those things together. This is an example of a pathway that we've developed with Cambridge Wireless. Cambridge Wireless are an employer membership organisation, and we recently developed this suite of digital badges for their Texters programme. This is a programme that's co-delivered with multiple employers to provide young people with industry relevant digital skills, which is about filling those gaps in the local talent pipeline into the tech industry. And digital badges and pathways can also be used to focus on specific interests. This happens to be a digital and also creative pathway. They can also lead into opportunities and destinations in further or higher education, or can be gained just for pleasure. But the point is that through the common skills language and the skills tagging, digital badges have these multiple benefits and can be used as a gateway to further learning, to boost confidence, democratise access to information that would otherwise be far more difficult to obtain, and intelligently connect this whole network of local opportunities. And again, from a local authority perspective, we've been working across a whole range of different partners and doing this kind of targeted recruitment of those people and those groups or cohorts, which we know are most at risk in terms of either not engaging in learning or being furthest from the labour market. And then we've been working with a range of partners to ensure that we can get those people to come to the region of learning and onto the XP platform. So working proactively with partners that local authorities are really well placed to do. So some of the services include those that are, say, for example, virtual school, which is aimed at engaging young people who are in care, for example. But again, working across a really, really wide range of partners in order to make sure that we've got maximum take-up from the groups that could benefit the most from this type of approach. We've also been building on a lot of those ideas and things that we tested, that we prototyped, and we're now using a QR code generator that enables an individual to identify themselves and their participation, have that recorded, so that the QR code enables badges to be automatically triggered. And over the next coming months, we'll be piloting an approach that takes the existing library card, which is at the moment is in the hands of over 50% of the local population, but has this very limited use in the sense of you can only use it to borrow a physical resource, and turning it into this smart universal passport to learning, skills and opportunity that can be used actually anywhere where learning takes place as well. So we continue to innovate on those fronts. And then just finally, part of the roadmap for this model, because we will continue to innovate and continue to develop, is really building on the work that we prototyped around data and impact measurement. And that's just a flavour of some of the data that we'll be collecting. And ultimately, what we aim to have with this is this much greater and more nuanced understanding of the complex relationship between things like socioeconomic background, skills development, career progression, and ultimately how, you know, coming back to my first slide, how all of those different things that contribute to social mobility, how we measure those and how we start to understand how these different things interplay with each other. And so that's everything that I wanted to touch on in my presentation. And I'm really pleased that I've got all the other partners who can also talk about their role within the project. But I'll just hand back to Debbie. Thank you very much.
Michelle, thank you. And I'm sure, like me, many of you, every time you hear Michelle speak about this, or if it's the first time you've heard her speak, you're probably quite blown away by the innovative nature of this project. And it's actually no surprise to me that such a brilliant idea that benefits young people much more broadly has come out of the arts and cultural sector. So very well done, Michelle. But let's move on now to another major arts organisation that's right behind the City of Learning project, and that's the Royal Society of Arts. And I'm very pleased now to introduce Tom Kenyon, who's Head of Enterprise and Design there, to talk to us about the development of the City of Learning model. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let me just share my slides as well. There are a number of us talking about this project from different angles, so I'm going to try not to sort of repeat what you've already heard too much, and I'll move through relatively fast. But I think I'd like to start by talking a bit about the RSA and the different perspectives that we always try to bring to how we think about systemic challenges and change. So we have 6 perspectives that we try to bring to any problem. One is to look at things in systems. So how do you understand challenges and change in ways where different kinds of things are nested together and interconnected, and how do you make change happen in those kinds of almost organic systemic functions. We try to be imaginative. We think about the future a lot. We have a lot of in-house expertise on sort of deliberative futures, working with people to imagine different ways that society might develop. We try to be adaptive, and I think that's been a real feature of this particular program, is that we understand that we have a vision, but we're agnostic to how we achieve it, and we try and move with how the energy and the new bits of information that come into our perspectives adapt. Collective, in that we try and work with disparate groups of people, different voices, and bring those together. One of the RSA's real strengths as an organisation is being able to convene different voices and different organisations to tackle challenges. We always have a long-term view of success. So a lot of the work that we've been doing in this space have been pilots or sort of the beginnings of a process, but I really hope that Cities of Learning as a as a kind of a methodology, as a network for change, it's something that we should be looking at sort of 5-10 year horizon for, because that's when we'll start to see some of the major impacts. And we approach things from a local to global perspective. So quite often what I'm thinking about when we're working with a place is not only like how the change is functioning in this case Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but how we can take that knowledge and spread and apply it in different places, so that we're always kind of build that body of knowledge and taking it as far as possible if there is good practice. The Cities of Learning programme first piloted in 2018. It was first mooted in 2016 in my sort of former boss Anthony Painter's paper. And we think of it as a sort of a social and digital innovation. So, you know, we're always careful not to position Cities of Learning as an ed tech intervention or a technology intervention. The practice that we look at has digital infrastructure in the badges and pathways, but an awful lot of the innovation that happens is really about different organizations working together in new ways, building new networks, having shared leadership structures, different ways of governing local learning infrastructure. And it's really, it's the two working together that has a massive impact. We grew out of the sort of an insight that a lot of learning in any given place, it's happening everywhere, but an awful lot of that learning is kind of hidden or at least not made visible. So all the skills that we know that people learn in the cultural sector, in museums, in clubs, and community centres, you know, it's quite often both invisible to the wider labour market, to formal education institutions, but often also to the learner themselves, that they don't sort of always recognise that the skills that they've gained in non-formal and unaccredited contexts are really valuable, both to themselves as the learner, to their own well-being, but also to the local economy. So we try and take what is often quite a fragmented system of learning and bring it together to become more than the sum of its parts. And we kind of refer to this as a whole place approach to learning. So you may see this sort of triad of phrases in other places, but we think about making learning visible, but both means sort of easily discoverable to learners, but also sort of visible to employers, measurable. So the badges, they actually are very useful as sort of you know, ways of understanding how learning progression is happening in a place, understanding the spread of skills across the place. You sort of there's not only a digital record for the learner, but also for sort of us as centralized bodies who are interested in how learning happens. And connected is what I think is always the most important part, that we're not looking at sort of how learning happens within a single organization and how you progress, but how you can progress across many different points of learning in a place. When we think about connection, some of the sort of the techniques that the RSA tries to bring when we're working with a place are sort of ecosystemic approaches to change. So we might start with systems mapping, trying to understand all the interconnecting systems that are at play in any given place or sector. We try to bring new research to bear on problems. So you know, for example, in our work recently with Southampton, we did an awful lot of work on the local skills mapping and how different future scenarios might play out into their local sort of skills network. So looking at what would happen if there was a heavy big tech future that was sort of driving the economy in the place versus one which was more sort of driven by the cultural sector and change, and what that would mean for sort of different skills emphasis that they wanted to bring. I've talked about convening. So quite often we end up helping local organisations to bring together different different providers, employers that are existing already in a place, but also hopefully we do try to bring sort of national voices and networks into that space as well. And I guess the final thing to mention is evaluation, which is something that we're doing really for the first time for this programme, led by the RSA, in place with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So sort of looking over a period of 3 years, what is working, how that progression for learners is happening, and really trying to understand that, again, to play back in to the wider network of Cities of Learning organisations. Just trying to move slides. I talked about research in the place. One of the things that we've been working on recently is a new report called Rebalancing Lifelong Learning, which we're launching next week, which has looked at how to engage learners who haven't thrived in traditional systems, which, you know, you've heard Michelle talk about that, and that's sort of a really important area for the RSA, is not only sort of how do you connect existing points of learning, but how do you bring people who haven't traditionally identified as learners into learning environments. And badging, we think, can play a really important role in that it helps to build learner identity. We talk about coming out of learning. There tend to be seen, there are 3 capitals. They could all, my boss is an economist, so we often talk about sort of capitals in the RSA. Identity capital, your sense of self; social capital, your networks and supports; and human capital, the skills that you can sell back to the market. The theory that we're putting forward in this report is that actually individuals need to develop their identity capital, their sense of self as a learner, and their social capital, their supports, in order to get to the point at which they're trying to develop those higher order skills, the human capital, back for the labour market. And that's why it is so important, so vital, that learning in non-formal contexts, in cultural contexts, is absolutely supported at all levels of the system. The skills for jobs narrative that's focused on a very sort of narrow range of higher order skills will never bring in new learners into that system unless people who haven't thrived through school and university have the opportunity to explore learning in different settings and develop that confidence, those skills, those supports that can see them through to sort of the point at which they might want to engage in formal and accredited courses. It's already been mentioned that there are 7 places within the sort of Cities of Learning network. Brighton and Plymouth were our pilot cities, and you'll hear from Ed and from Rachel, who led programs in those areas. And we've maintained great relationships both in those places, but also really sort of developed the whole offer together from there. I mentioned the future of work process that we went through in Southampton. In Tees Valley, there's a real emphasis on looking at the creative industry sector, and so we're developing new pathways for learning around that. And within Bradford, they already had sort of a number of employability pathways that were developed there, and for them it was really a case of how do we sort of start badging in those and bring our energy to those already established employability pathways, and then connect those to the wider local system. And in
Tom,
Belfast,
I'm sorry to interject. I'm just going to ask if you could begin to sum up now, because we'll need to move on to the next speaker very soon.
Perfect. I will happily do that. So I'll just say that the leadership program that we've been working on in this place is sort of a 12-month program where we work with local leaders to sort of try and support them to drive the Cities of Learning program in their place. I'm sure you'll hear much more about how that works from my colleagues as we go, but I'm more than happy to finish there.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I've already got questions forming in my head, as I'm sure many of you have as well. We're going to now hear from Ed Hart, who's the programme lead at Real Ideas, and he's going to be talking about engaging communities in digital badging.
Better unmute, hadn't I? There we go. First one to do that today. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks to everyone so far. Badge Nation, what on earth is that? We grew from one of the pilots that Tom was talking about. I'm going to give a very, very brief history of myself. I'm a youth worker by background. I worked in youth centres with young people doing stuff that I know had value, but that we couldn't accredit and that we couldn't give to those young people in any kind of lasting way to take forwards other than the experience itself. And I've then subsequently worked trying to get young people to articulate their skills into CVs. Really difficult, even when they've got them, to get them to reflect on what those skills are, where they've developed them and how they can be transferred into the labour market. So when digital badges came along to me in pilot in Plymouth, it was manna from heaven. I was like, this is actually the thing that we need for young people to recognise this stuff. And from those pilots, Badge Nation was born, and that was really us saying, this is great, we need to make this available to the rest of the country and to organisations up and down the land. And so we bought ourselves a badge issuing facility, and we took it out and started trying to make that as accessible as possible to small organisations, local authorities, whoever felt like it was going to be a good idea. And it's been really great to be doing the work in Cambridge and seeing that start to happen out at scale. So we have, since we started Badge Nation as a thing at the start of 2021, worked with 162 organisations, 11 of which are local authorities. This slide is getting really out of date really quickly. I'll say we've issued 10,000 digital badges. It's actually just flying up. I cannot keep this slide up to date, which is really exciting. So it's actually more than 10,000 badges this year in 2022, let alone the work we did in 2021 and 2020, where the figures were also reasonably good. So the curve is really sharp right now. The sorts of organisations, this is a very wordy slide, I'm going to whistle through it, but the sorts of organisations that we have onboarded and who are using digital badges to badge these things that don't have a formal qualification attached to them are schools for their extracurricular and career explorer activity, further education colleges, placements, vocational placements are such a powerful thing in the world. People gain so much skills, yet they're not recognised in a formal qualification, or the experiences that those young people get aren't detailed in any way. Student enrichment, short courses. Universities are starting to badge their knowledge exchange, the work that they do linking with industry, their community outreach and student union projects. Great examples of badges in those spaces. Training providers, vocational training providers, we've got loads of them using digital badges to badge digital technical welding boot camps across the southwest, but also skills academies where businesses, organisations might have a skills academy attached to a large building development, for example, seeing digital badges for that. We've got examples of graduate and startup business support programs being badged, the Set Squared partnership, for example. Charities and CICs, this is my home turf. People doing public facing workshops and delivery with young people, people badging volunteer offers, move that into the arts and cultural world, where education and outreach activity is happening, where youth engagement, participation work, youth advocacy, and where young people may be involved in governance or volunteering, and actually where not so young people are involved in things like volunteering as well. They're really great ways to recognise that sort of activity. We have employers coming onto the platform, badging their work experience, badging their placement offerings. Kickstart, Rachel will talk a little bit more about in detail how badges were used in that. We have badges for internships and apprenticeships, and we're really trying to campaign that employers badge their casual and entry-level roles as a way of adding value to what would otherwise be possibly a relatively low-paid and possibly slightly transitory employment experience, the badging being something that actually supports the idea of positive churn and onward development from those entry-level roles. And then local authorities, of course, you could the fact that we've got these local authorities who are taking on really ambitious place-based initiatives under the Cities of Learning banner, trying to make really big systemic change and badging ecosystems. But also, we really encourage local authorities to think of themselves as employers. And often, of course, many of you will have public engagement programs. There's a Plymouth City Council are badging flood awareness courses, for example. So loads of examples of badges being used in loads of different ways. And it's been, I tell you what, it's been a phenomenal way to learn about the world, watching all of these badges come through. Because the thing about a badge, if you haven't seen one in detail, this is what they look like when you click on one. You have the badge visual at the top, which carries the organisation's logo and all of the credibility that goes along with that. But then you have all of this wonderful data that you, the badge issuing organisation, get to write into that badge. You write what the badge was about, you write the skills that the person has demonstrated, and then you write the really detailed earning criteria of exactly what a person has done in order to achieve that badge. And this was the bit, when you're talking about supporting young people to write CVs, this is where the value sits. That memory of what they did fades really fast. But when you write it down and present it in a digital permanent record that's attributed to that individual and carries the organisation's logo, that's where you get that really lasting gift of language to individuals that they can take into their future attempts to gain employment. Sharing them out, we've talked about, but these are real. These are real examples of badges being shared to LinkedIn. They go to your certificates and licenses section of your LinkedIn profile, and they stay there unless you remove them. But they can also be shared out on the feed as well. So you see badges being shared across the LinkedIn profile. And when badge issuing is done really well by an organisation, that rate of sharing can be really high, and you can see your badges with your logo on flying around the internet on LinkedIn with proud young people or not so young people sharing those achievements and those pieces of recognition as they go along. What stops you writing a badge that just says, lovely haircut, Ed, thanks very much for coming today? This is the thing that we do that no other organisation with digital badges does at all. We quality assure badges according to the RSA badge standard. And this is a framework that was developed as part of the Cities of Learning programme and really gives us the opportunity to bring rigour to badges, to make sure that the badges that go up onto Navigatr and the badges that get written as part of Cities of Learning programmes and the badges that get written through Badge Nation are good and of a good quality and of a consistent standard. There are 4 layers in the badging standard. We can go into in more detail if people have questions, but I made a very bold promise that I'd stick to time, and it's 1:45. So the process for us is we get people to write their metadata, we quality assure it, we talk to them, we make the badge visual, and then we put it up onto Navigatr ready for issuing, and that organisation can go away and start recognising the people that they work with. Thank you. I'm still on 1:45. There we go.
Ed, you've done brilliantly, and I think your hair deserves a badge. So thank you very much.
It won't be a Badge Nation badge because it wouldn't pass quality assurance, as simple as that. So
I know a man. I know a man. Okay, we'll move on now to our next speaker, which we've got Rachel Carter, who's the strategic lead for learning skills and enterprise future creators and she's going to talk to us about Brighton, the success story so far. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to try and keep to time as Ed has demonstrated. So bit of background about me. I was in the local authority in Brighton Hove, leading on the skills and employment agenda, located within the education team, but worked very closely with the economic team and the cultural group at Brighton Hove. And I suppose my insights come as being, similarly to Ed, as being one of the pilot cities. And my role has been over the last year is more mentoring the new places, and Tom has referenced those, so I won't go into those in any detail, but working with new places, and I've worked closely with the Cambridgeshire team as well. So just a little bit about Future Creators, which I now seem unable to move on my slide, which is annoying. Is it not moving?
Try the very bottom left corner.
There's nothing showing there to move me. Oh, wait a minute, it's doing. So, sorry. Future Creators is a local cultural education partnership. So picking up earlier references to this, our pilot was very much through a cultural creative lens, but also well-being was a significant issue for us and wanting to support that. So we're a partnership organisation working across not just Brighton Hove, but into a wider region of made up of colleges, etc., and local authority, arts and heritage. And what we did and what we continue to do is work very much with partners. And I've listed there some of those. At DWP, we did the Kickstart programme, which I'll come on to. DCMS, we've got funding at the moment for their Volunteering Futures programme. We always are looking for opportunities. Where's the revenue stream coming in and how can we use badges to illustrate impact? So that's been very much a focus for us. So what makes the biggest difference in a place? Really about the strength of leadership, being visible, accessible and effective, and having a reputation for leadership in a particular place. So obviously that can happen through a local authority, but there's lots of other bodies that can take that leadership. Networks are crucial as well, and either whether that's sector organisations, we work closely with the Chamber of Commerce locally, but also regionally, and the business community. And the other aspect here is about communication strategy and being it's internal and external, but as a strategy working with training providers, with employers, but also learners, which is really important, is how you communicate what you're doing with learners. I recognise that Ed has covered a lot of this, but some of these examples are very much focused on the cultural sector. I don't propose to go through this, but you can read these slides separately, just the sorts of activities that that could be badged and is a priority in areas is particularly how you demonstrate impact and the enrichment activity that may be happening in extracurricular. So I'm just going to move on to this is a sample pathway that is a good example of what we've done locally within our music service, which sits within Future Creators. A young person participating in music goes through a range of activities, similarly to what Ed described as the badging standard. These experiences build on each other, from learning classroom-based skills to then performance skills, and moving through into either employment or self-employment. So there's that progression, and Michelle has also talked about pathways. So this is as an example. I've got a few case studies. I'm conscious of time, so I won't spend too much time on these. This is a volunteering programme run by Fabrica, which is a local arts organisation, and they have been offering for some time volunteering opportunities, and this was a way of formalising and giving young people a way of evidencing and being able to articulate the experience they've had. So as you can see, going through from an induction programme to then starting as a beginner, but then becoming an experienced participant. So this is within that organisation, and this is something that they've been running for, as I say, for a number of years, so we'll continue to do so. And then Brighton Dome and Brighton Festival, within which Future Creators sits under Brighton Dome, and this as an NPO needs to be able to demonstrate engagement with a wide range of audiences. So there's a range of activities that happen under Brighton Dome. Orchestra 360 is a nice example. This is a orchestra for people with special needs, and so there's a range of badges that were created for those participants to demonstrate the activities they'd undertaken. Moving on to Kickstart, I mentioned earlier about the sort of government departments that we've worked with. DWP very quickly got on board with the concept of digital badges, and we worked in partnership with them both as a gateway organisation, but we did secure additional funding to run a pre-employment programme, which we called a Creative Kickstart programme. And these are badges and that were awarded as part of that engagement. So, and we ran an event with DWP, so all attendees were rewarded a digital badge as part of their experience. We also created badges that were awarded to employers who were Kickstart employers, seeing them as ambassadors for the programme. And as I say, the Creative Kickstart programme, which, and so, sorry, here there's numbers of participants and 37 employers and the attendees. And then as part of the actual Kickstart programme, we ran a virtual learning circles for those participants. So pulling together those young people once a month to learn from each other and to find out more about opportunities beyond the programme. So very much a supported programme, not just leaving young people, but supporting them throughout. And just sort of finally, just to say, one of the things that we're sort of continue to do is to look at new opportunities. So I've mentioned the Volunteering Futures DCMS. We've got Arts Council funding via the Talent Accelerator in East Sussex. So that's supporting cultural and creative activities. We met with them this morning. We're moving quickly towards badging. The local skills improvement plan, people will know about that in their local areas, where we see ourselves as a significant contributor to that. And obviously everyone's waiting on the MPO announcement, so we'll see how we figure in that world going forward. So that's the Brighton experience. Sorry, it's a whistle-stop tour, I know, but I'm hopefully on time. Oh, I'm early. There you go.
Rachel, thank you so much, and really good to see and hear some examples of this project and programme in action. So thank you very much for that. It's very inspiring. We'll move on now to Tim Richards, who's a director at Navigatr, and he's going to give us a demonstration of the digital platform. So Tim, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I thought I'd try and do something a bit different today. This is the first time I've done it on a call like this today. So rather than slides, now we've got a working platform. Exactly. We thought we'd risk it. So yeah, Navigatr is the platform that hosts XP and hosts the Cities of Learning programs, and of course the fabulous work that Badge Nation have been describing to you as well today. It's a place where it's a platform where we aim to make it really easy for people to be able to discover local activities, badges, to be able to get recognition, to be able to be issued with those badges, and to be able to see how those badges and skills can build pathways to different opportunities to learning and to work. So it's quite an ambitious platform. It was developed through quite a few bits of learning over the years, really. So through Cities of Learning, obviously, we've learned a lot working with the different cities, but also working with City and Guilds Group as well. We helped City and Guilds move from a 150-year-old paper-based issuing organisation into one that issues digital badges, but also working with cities as well. And I think one way to think of it, from a local authority point of view or for an educator point of view, is it's like a toolkit to help you launch a learning program which recognises learning, which builds into pathways, which then builds into communities and a region of learning platform. So it's been quite a while in the making, and it's exciting to be here because it's taken about a year to sort of build it and get it ready. To show you. You don't often get a chance to show something really innovative that you're excited and proud about. So, so I'm going to jump over onto a demo now. Hopefully you can all see that okay. I'm going to assume that's a yes. So I'm going to just ask you to imagine now that you've launched this incredible badging program. You've designed these badges and you want to let the world know where they can find them. You want to make them discoverable. So the good news is we've automated that process. So all the badges that Ed develops and puts onto the platform just automatically arrive here in a search engine. So let's say I was interested in recycling. Let me look that up. So I'll just search for recycling now, and I can see there are two things here. These vertical lines here show that it's an activity, so it's something you can get involved in to learn about recycling. This tick here means it's a badge, so that's something you're going to get recognised with as part of the activity. So if I click onto the activity now, so what I can see is a description of that activity. We can see that it's happening in Cambridgeshire, so it's one of the XP badges. There's a description there. There's the badge that I'm going to earn as part of that activity, and I can see the start and the end dates. Michelle mentioned that all of the content on the site uses a common language of skills. So underneath here, this is a term you'll get used to, is tags. This means skills tags. And here are all the different skills that you'll develop through participating in this activity. And these come from a dynamic skills taxonomy of about 30,000 skills, and they're taken from looking at over 100 million job adverts online, and each month or two that taxonomy updates. And the real advantage to using that taxonomy means that everything that we put on the site is consistent. And that means, as a learner, let's say I'm interested in the recycling thing, but I've looked down here and I'm actually also interested in volunteering. So if I click on volunteering now, I can see all of the related opportunities for learning and for jobs that are related to volunteering. And because we're using those skills tags as well, and they're skills tags which are based on employer language, as Ed was saying before, badges are a great way to help you demonstrate that your skills to employers. But if we're using the right language, language defined by employers, that means when they get to an employer and explain their skills, employers are really going to understand that language as well. So those skills tags help us bring consistency. They help people explore different things around the site, and they help us align with employment as well. So I'm going to look at a couple of badges now. I'm going to take a bit of a shift away from recycling. I'm going to go into coding. So here's a badge which recognises skills for coding, but how would I actually issue that badge? So I'm going to sort of go into the role of an educator now, if you like. And there are three ways for us to issue those badges. The first is with email, the second is through activities, and the third is with QR codes. Now, email issuing, I wanted to show you this just to show you how easy it is to actually issue badges. So if you're able to use Facebook or an iPad, it's very, very simple. So you click on email issue, put a first name in, a second name in, the email address, and that's it. Then the badge gets issued. So that's perfect if someone's finished the course, but you're not face to face with them anymore, and you want to issue them with a badge after the activity is finished. But what we've also added is something called activities. So on activities, these are things that you would advertise to people to come and take part in. So this is come and take part in this Python workshop. I can see that 3 people have attended that, 3 people have bookmarked it. And I've also got a blue attendance button here. So I can just click a button there and that would issue the badge to someone who's attending the workshop. So using activities to issue badges is another way to issue them, but it's great if you're doing say like a Zoom course or a virtual course online, everyone's there at the same time, and then you can just instantly issue those badges. And then the third way to issue badges, Michelle mentioned before, is by QR codes. So I'm going to try a live demo here. I'm going to open Navigatr on the mobile phone, and I'm going to reveal my QR code. My QR code is basically my identity on the phone. And if I put that up to the webcam, and nothing always goes perfectly on a live demo, does it? for some reason it's not picking that up. Maybe it's the reflection, but that should issue you directly, and it has done all morning, to your QR code, and that should instantly then come onto your profile. So that's finding badges, and that's issuing badges. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about statistics, because actually each badge that you create, or each pathway or activity you create, I'm sure will have some kind of learning objective linked to it. So once you've got that learning objective, obviously it would be great if you could evaluate it. On each part around the site, you will see on each different part, so this is an activity, you will be able to see who's interested in it by looking at bookmarks, who's attended it, and how many badges have been issued to people. So that's really powerful data to be able to monitor how effective your program is being. And if we go on to a badge view, we can see the same as well. I'm going to go finally onto an active pathway view. And on a pathway, I can see how many people have enrolled on it, bookmarks again, but I can also see how many people have progressed through the pathway and what stage they're at as well. So all of that data can be gathered, all that engagement data across those different touch points. And the next development we're working on is a data dashboard. So if you're running a community like Michelle is for XP, and there's a really impressive list of providers, I'm just scrolling down here to show you some of them. And she'll be able to see statistics from across all of those and be able to monitor the effectiveness of the program, which is quite a powerful feature. Ed already mentioned sharing, so I won't spend long on this, but each piece of content that is developed or badges that are earned can all be shared across social media. So that's a really powerful way to promote programs, and it's also a powerful way for people to showcase their skills as well. All of the activity, whether it's badges, activities, and pathways, are saved on a personal profile. So I can see the activities that I'm attending or coming up here. I also get notifications just to remind me of anything that's coming up. Here you'll notice that there's a revoked badge. So as well as issuing badges, you can revoke them from people as well. Let's say it's been fraudulently issued or there's been a mistake being made, and I can see those pathways as well. So I think that's just about everything I wanted to cover. There's one other thing, just that all the activity from across the country is also displayed on a map. So if you're running a region of learning, you want to see where there's activity and strong activity, or where you need to invest more in, you can see what's happening and where. And yeah, in terms of getting involved and actually using the platform, there's two sort of calls to action, if you like. One is to go through Ed, who will introduce you to badging and pathways, or you can come to us and we will talk you through a kind of more in-depth tour of the website and introduce you to pathways. And just to finish off, just like to tell you a quick story. So my journey into getting involved in badges, started using badges sort of back in 2015. And one of the first times we pitched it, it was to a group of young people at Studio 12 in Leeds. And Studio 12 is a place where you can go to learn about coding and 3D animation and script writing and that kind of thing. It's designed specifically for people that don't have any qualifications. The quality of the work is just quite outstanding. And as Ed was saying before, when we spoke to educators there, they saw badges as a really fantastic way to be able to recognise learning. They tried qualifications before, but they were too inflexible. But when we pitched it to young people at the end of the day, they also loved the badges and they loved receiving them. But they did leave us with one question. And they said, you know, will this actually help me with my career? Will it help me get a job? Because none of those young people wanted to go back into education. They all wanted to transition into jobs. And I think what's really exciting about the project and where we are now, and everyone that's spoken today, is that we've joined together the individual learners, educational providers and employers, because at the end of the day, we really want these badges to have currency with people. And I think that's what's really exciting about connecting the thinking, the design of the badges and the platform to make sure that these badges really count for young people who get issued with them. And that's it from me.
Tim, that's great. Thank you so much, and really good to see how this works behind the scenes, and what is probably very complex made to look so simple and easily functionable. So thank you. We're going back to Ed now from Badge Nation, and his part of this roundtable is really important because it's about how you can get involved. What sort of steps would you need to consider? So Ed, back over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And as Tim said, Tim and I sort of tag team a little bit in what is now a completely joint and partnership offer between Navigatr and Badge Nation. But there are basically, I say there are three ways. What Tim just finished with left me with a fourth way to get started, which is actually something that every single organization could do really, really simply and quickly tomorrow, which is to write to your directors of HR and say, do you think we could put a line on our website on the Work With Us page that said, please show us your badges? Because that would be such a powerful piece for every single organization that recruits people to jobs that could be done tomorrow without really very much effort. And I promise you, those HR teams who do that shortlisting work will thank you, because it's a really, really great way. I've seen badges in recruitment processes as a recruiter, and it's a brilliant way to see whether someone can do a thing or not. So you could all do that tomorrow at zero cost to your organizations. However, there are three sort of more significant ways that you could get involved and get started if you think a badging and pathways offer is for you. They are, very simply, you could start using digital badges and pathways in a small and limited way as a single organisation on Navigatr. And we have a number of local authorities that are already doing that just for themselves, badging their placements or their apprenticeships or things like that as a single organisation. You can start, because you are strategic leaders in this room, you can start bringing organisations together with a defined community on Navigatr and get them badging together for a shared purpose. And you can do that in a relatively small way as an entry point. Or you could become a city or a region of learning and work with the RSA, Badge Nation and Navigatr to create a proper, ambitious city or region-wide delivery strategy for badging an ecosystem. And that would involve support then with the RSA leadership program and all of those wonderful things that Tom articulated as benefits of that. Give you an idea of where the price points for that stuff are. So for an individual organisation, these are all sliding scales. The prices here are the entry points, and there are limits to the possibilities at those entry points. But for an individual organisation who wants to use badges and pathways, get a badging offer up straight away for the activity that they have control of, that starts at £200 plus VAT for a year. They increase in scale and cost right up to include, you know, even the biggest organisation in the world with really ambitious offers and dreams for badging. If you wanted to bring a group of organisations together as a community on Navigatr, that would involve one of those organisations taking the lead and being the community admin and taking on something not unlike what Michelle describes, but you can start with a much smaller ambition than the amazing and eye-watering amounts of work that Michelle has done in the last 6 years to get where she's going. You can start with as small as 5 organisations coming together in a community, and those start from £5,000 plus VAT a year, and then they go up. There are much larger scale supported communities with up to 20 organisations and deeper level support more around the 20k mark. And then there are some additional services and features that can be bolted on to sort of all and any of that, including things like Navigatr have developed a live jobs feed that pull live jobs in from using the Lightcast labour market intelligence tool to make that an intelligent match. And they have a special category data collection piece that enables local authorities to really drill into the characteristics of the users of those badges and pathways, tailored stats dashboards, And then, as Tim was talking about, where my expertise and his expertise really differ, integration pieces with existing platforms, things that allow Navigatr to be plugged in as a software as a service model, and it's absolutely designed for integration with other platforms. And then, of course, there's the option to become a city or a region of learning. And this is me speaking for Tom here. This is to work with the RSA Leadership Programme, designing delivery strategies, identifying key stakeholders and systems mapping, as Tom described earlier, and then to work with Badge Nation and Navigatr to display badge and display those ecosystems that have been mapped and identified and ultimately change the world. Contact details are here. The slides will be circulated, so please do reach out and get in touch if any of that interests you. Thank you.
Fabulous. That's very, very clear. Thank you. So we now move over into the time of the session where we have a Q&A for participants to talk to our panel. So I'm going to ask all those who've spoken if you could put your screens on, and for people to raise their hands or to type questions in the chat. I think I'm going to have a new hashtag. Please show us your badges as a result of this session. So Heidi, I don't know if we're going to tweet about this session today, but I think that would be a brilliant hashtag for us all to focus on. Whilst I'm waiting for questions, I've got a couple of my own, which are to any of you really, with the practical experience of getting involved with this. Can you say a little bit about how you've brought funding to the table, where it's been needed? And I have a follow-up as well. Have you had any really big or particular challenges that you'd like to share in terms of how you've overcome them?
I don't mind answering about funding. So our work has always been externally funded within Cambridge City Council, or the vast majority, something like 95% of it. And yeah, we started off with our feasibility work, which was funded through Arts Council England, and also Norfolk and Norwich Festival Bridge. And then when we went through, that was successful, we went through to live prototyping. That was funded through Paul Hamlin Foundation, Arts Council England, Cambridgeshire School Improvement Board, and then a bit of a mouthful, but the it was part of the Economic Research Council. It was the Business and Local Government Data Research Centre. They'll get that out. And we also had some transformation funding internally at City Council that enabled us to do our prototyping. And then really when COVID struck, that was when some of our existing funding plans kind of had to be rethought. We developed a much deeper relationship with the combined authority. We started thinking a lot more about skills and economic development, which then led us really into more central government funding, and ultimately to the European Social Fund, managed through DWP. And that was a bit of a game changer, because that created a significant funder, which we then matched with Arts Council England, transformation funding actually from our county council, Cambridgeshire County Council, Greater Cambridge Partnership. So we started then developing a funding kind of model that took in the other district or local authorities, because the patch of the project, whilst we're Cambridge City Council, was actually Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, which represented the geography of the European Social Fund. So we had quite a journey, And during COVID, we did one initial kind of model of the project, but then when COVID became the kind of impact of that became more apparent, we then had to kind of model the project as a COVID response project. So there's a number of challenges around that, but the strength of the model and the strength of, if you like, the iteration of the project at each stage, we've got really strong proof of concept, which was the thing that enabled us to build on. And equally, any other cities that are thinking about coming on board with this and might be thinking about fundraising, you can kind of build on the work that we've all done. Because again, it's that kind of growing proof of concept, albeit now kind of actually into live delivery. So there's a lot that you can draw upon in terms of thinking about whether that's business case for internal or external funding.
Great stuff, Michelle. And this video of this meeting is going to be available on the CLOA website. So potentially hundreds of local authorities up and down the country be able to access this and pick up these tips. I'm going to go to Rachel now, Rachel Carter, and then Edward. Ed.
Okay. So I would approach it sort of similarly to Michelle, but also slightly differently, in as much look at what's already happening where you're receiving funding, and you can use badging as a component, as a way of evidencing, but a tool to be used within the funding. So so the Volunteering Futures programme, which is DCMS funded and is a pilot, badging is a way, it's not built around badging, or badging is a key component of that. We weren't bidding for funding for badging, we were bidding for funding for delivering volunteering programmes. But badging is a way of, has been built into that bid. So wherever you have a bid, and we were looking at that there was a sort of levelling up or whatever it was, there was some funding, I can't remember what it was now, where we built badging as a component of that. So wherever any opportunity arises, think about how badging may be able to support you. The challenges question, the challenges about resources and capacity and getting people over the line and confidence. Those are the sort of things that I would say are immediate challenges. But that's where the beauty of Badge Nation and the partnership with Navigatr, the resources now available were not available to myself and Ed when we started off, if only. So you'll benefit from our pain in a way. So there's lots of resources, how to, onboarding advice, the work that Tim has done with Navigatr. So there's lots and lots of support in terms of that challenge. And the other thing is about engaging with employers and making sure there's either a call to action or they can see immediately the benefit of digital badging, but also getting them to recognise, and I know several people have mentioned this, is recognising badging when they're in their recruitment and talking to your HR department. Ed mentioned that. So all the challenges, we've been there, done them, we faced them. So I don't think anybody in this room would be fazed by supporting organisations, local authorities to get through some of those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, everyone's working in different environments, but many of us have got partnerships that we can think of now that might be interested in talking to us about this type of work, local cultural or economic partnerships and so on. I'm moving on now to Ed, who had his hand up. Do you still have your hand up, Ed?
Yeah, well, I took it down, but I did
Okay.
have something to add to that. A couple of things to add to, I mean, to echo really what Rachel said about, the role that local authorities are going to play in the coming years as funders or as conduits for funding, and so therefore the power that you have to suggest featuring digital badges as impact measures in that piece, really powerful. But actually, one of the things that I'm always really keen to make the case for as people come and consider buying a package like this is you're thinking about the sustainability and the presentation to those organizations that you're buying it for of the value of the thing that you're getting them, and the idea that they should be thinking about funding that themselves, because if they get it, they land it and they make it work right, those organizations will immediately see the value for themselves outside of whatever purpose you bought it for them, and they will want to buy and expand their offering for themselves and exist outside of that realm. And that becomes the way that it becomes more self-sustaining, because the organizations at grassroots levels see the value in it for the people that they're working with and start to buy in and sustain it from the bottom up. So seeing yourselves as the motivators and the people who unlock the first year of activity and make that all possible, and then the sort of central costs reducing over time, and the grassroots costs being met by those organisations longer term.
Thanks, Ed. We've got a comment here from Graham. Graham, do you want to just talk to us about that? And say hello and introduce yourself. You're on mute.
I guess the nature of the round table means that providers and people that are already supportive of the scheme are here. But I thought a personal testimony from people in receipt of badges would have been really helpful, just to kind of explore the circumstances where they're issued and their feelings. And
Graham, if I can jump in on that, we have got a video which we can send through to your guys to circulate, which shows a number of youth voices, people talking about what the badges meant to them. So that's a video that was put together by the RSA, so that can be circulated. So I think that will give you that insight to a degree.
Just popped it in the chat for you.
Brilliant. And I think my other, I think I had a second part to my comment was, I guess there's going to be an inbuilt prejudice amongst employers with regard to formal qualifications and informal qualifications. And I don't know how you kind of battle and overcome that.
Can I jump in again as well on that? Is particularly in sectors where the formal qualifications don't keep up with skills. So particularly in things like digital sectors, the employers, and this has happened through when we've looked at the local skills improvement plan, employers, and this was regionally across Sussex, employers were saying qualifications don't do it for us. We don't, if somebody does an apprenticeship for 2 years in digital skills, by the time they come out, the sector's moved on. So they're not learning, things need to be delivered in a very different way and skills need to be delivered. It's not, so those are where you've got technical skills. The other aspect of badging is around character skills. And so they complement, they wrap around the formal qualifications. They're not instead of, they're in addition to. But I think in certain sectors, and I'm particularly looking at the sort of the climate education at the moment is a particular area where there aren't the qualifications. So if you can present a solution that is skill based and that actually develops the skills that employers want, that's the focus, is what the other skills that employers are asking for that can be delivered and perhaps recognised through a set of digital badges showing progression through that activity. So I think there's ways of positioning it not as an alternative to, but how they can complement. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. So we've got 5 minutes left. On the list of people to have a word, I've got Ed, and then Tim, and Michelle. Did you have your hand up as well? So if we go Ed, then Tim, and then Michelle.
I'll be super quick. If I had a penny for every time I've been asked, do employers recognise digital badges? And the answer that I've given over time is digital badges are a tool to display your skills. So it's a bit like saying, do employers recognise CVs? Answer, No, in some cases they don't anymore. They've given up on those. They're looking for LinkedIn profiles that are really effective or something else instead. So it's just, they are just a tool. So they are in the hands of the individual to display their skills. So if they're shown to employers in an effective way, then yeah, employers will recognise them because they articulate skills brilliantly. And if they're not, they won't. So it is about how you use your tools.
Thanks, Ed. Tim?
Really quick one, Graham. It's probably worth just giving a little bit of context around open badges, which we're now referring to digital badges. And there are 3 sort of really well-known brands that are using that you will know of. One is City and Guilds Group. The other is the Open University, and the other is IBM. And there are hundreds and hundreds more. 100 million of them are issued a year. But City and Guilds Group use them because they recognise that actually they need to become more flexible and adaptable, as Rachel was saying, to the marketplace. Open University are launching them in sort of bite-sized chunk courses, which are sort of badged online courses. And IBM are using them to attract, retain and develop their staff, but also skill up their supply chains as well. So we're seeing a sort of change in the use of credentials alongside something that's just much more flexible and adaptable, but alongside qualifications. So that change is happening, and I think we're just sort of piggybacking on that wave at the moment. But it's not just us using badges. We've not invented them. We're using something which is you know, a growing global standard.
Thanks, Tim. I'm just going to ask some of our contributors, if you're willing to be contacted by anybody on the call, if you could pop your name and email address into the chat before we finish. Michelle, over to you. You're on mute.
Typical. Yeah, just a few other sort of comments on the employer question, because it is really interesting. So we've done a lot of research based on kind of employers' responses to surveys, kind of on a national but also on a local level, and there is a huge kind of skills deficit that exists, well, kind of nationally, but depending on where your growth sectors are. So across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, it's very, very well documented, the range of skills shortages that exist. And one of the great thing about badges and pathways is you can develop, this is that kind of future skills for future jobs piece, where you can identify where those deficits are and where the gaps are, and actually design a program or a pathway that then can lead people to develop the skills that are most in demand. I think the other thing about digital badging is that it can be, you can digitally badge things that are certified as well. So it's not just informal learning, it's formal learning as well. And City and Guilds, who, you know, have got, I think they've got about 2,500 digital badges, which are all certificated learning. So so whilst a lot of what we've been talking about is on the informal learning side and also the transferable skills, digital badging is absolutely far and wide, and 100 million badges are now issued a year, and it includes things that recognise transferable skills, specialised skills and certified skills. And we're kind of like, you know, in many ways I think we're just sort of skimming the surface of what the potential is of digital badging and the way that we're now building the digital badge content. But yeah, there's so much potential for actually the whole gamut of learning and certification.
Thanks, Michelle. Unfortunately, whilst we could probably chat about this all afternoon, we have come to the end of the session time. And I have to say, although I do know about region of learning, and I have the fortune to have Michelle in my team, I don't fail to be inspired every time I hear more about it from Michelle and all the partners on the roundtable today. This really is levelling up in action, isn't it? Using the very best of our tech, our innovation, but yes, it's such a simple idea and one that really engages young people. So please don't hesitate to find out more about this from people you've heard from today. I'd really like to thank all the speakers we've heard from today for your contributions and your time. It's been great having you, so thank you very much. Thank you too to Heidi Bellamy of CLOA for organising the event and making things run so seamlessly. And thank you participants for attending today and participating. I hope you've all found it enjoyable. Show us your badges. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.